Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is loosen the wheel nuts themselves, and it's best to do this with the wheel still on the ground, so the car isn't jacked at all at this stage. And the reason being, that just gives you lots of friction to work against, so the wheel doesn't sort of spin when you're trying to do it if it was elevated. So if you get the wheel locking nut, and then you just kind of have to wiggle it until it bites. And then with the vehicle itself, you should have this device with your sort of spare wheel kit, and then that's just going to sit on the end. I'm going to put a fair bit of oomph just to loosen that off. And then this is where I'm going to use my 19mm socket. And again, I'll use a breaker bar. I'll attach it in a second, show you me doing that. And basically, yeah, just loosen all these off. Apologies, it's a 17mm socket. So again, just going to slide it over, and then you can just put a load of weight through this. If you're feeling safe, I've tended to stand on this so I can get my body weight over it, and that'll push the breaker bar down and then allow you just to loosen these. So I'm now going to jack the car up. So before even jacking up the car, first thing I've done, I've put the handbrake on, left it in first gear, and then I've put these wheel chocks here, because what you don't want to happen is when you've jacked the vehicle, or as you're jacking it, you don't want the vehicle to roll and it will slip off of the jack itself. Then on this particular vehicle, they've got these handy marks just in the sill itself, and that lets you know where there's a jacking point, depending on which side. There's an equivalent at the rear as well, just here. So again, these are your reinforced sort of jacking points underneath the car itself. And then I've got my axle stands ready to go. So once I've got it to sufficient height, I'll then find a place underneath the vehicle to pop these axle stands, so that it will be resting on both the trolley jack and the axle stands itself. Okay, so I've secured one of the axle stands underneath the other jacking point just here, which I'm just going to lower the vehicle down onto, and then another axle stand underneath the strut that runs underneath the actual vehicle itself. Next thing I'm going to do then, once I've loaded the vehicle down onto the axle stands and keeping this trolley jack in place, is I'm just going to take the nuts off of the wheel now and then pull the wheel off and pop it to one side. So the next part of the process is actually take this wheel arch cover off itself. Now from research I've done, some people are saying there's T25 Torx bits that you'll need to undo this. Now I don't know if this has been replaced at some stage, but for me I'm using an E11 socket, and that's going to go on this particular screw there, and then I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver to get under these little clips here. Again, online it recommends that you use ear clamp pliers, but I don't have a pair of those, so I'm just going to try and get a flathead underneath to pop that off. And then this piece here, and there's one up here as well, and then this piece should be able to be removed. With the wheel arch cover removed, I was able to do it with a flathead screwdriver. Definitely ear clamp pliers will make it a bit easier, but yeah, I was able to get the flathead underneath those caps, wriggle it around a bit and then pull it off, so it was manageable in the end. But now I've got this fuel filter bracket, so I'm just going to undo the screw just here. It's an E16 socket, and I've needed to put an extension on now, so I'll just undo that now. So next thing I'm going to need to do is to remove the sensor wiring from the top and the two fuel lines coming into the filter itself. And you can note now they're color coded. On this one I can see the green is on the left and the white is on the right, and these are dotted as well on the spare. So I've got my drip tray ready to go, and some kitchen towel as well. So that was actually a bit more challenging than I thought it was going to be. The outlet fuel line, so it's green is green for go, so that goes into the fuel filter. Once the fuel's been filtered, it comes out of the outlet fuel line and then into the engine from there. That was easy enough, just was able to compress it and then lift it off, as it should work. This one, however, a real pain. I actually had to go and get my neighbour to help. He's got a bit more know-how than I have, working for Halfords. And what we ended up doing was disconnecting it at the siphon end, just here. Again, a compression push fit. So we pushed that tab in, released it, fed the whole thing through, so that then we could move the fuel filter about to this stage, and then we were able to then prise it off with a bit of a jiggery pokery. So now the fuel filter is just draining. I'm going to undo this end here, which will allow me to then pull the sort of sensor end out the fuel filter itself. But you can see the state of it, and that's why it's so challenging. This is the first time I believe the fuel filter has been changed on this vehicle. I think we're the third owners. So yeah, just goes to show, just get it done when you're meant to do it, and then you'll avoid a lot of hassle later on. Okay, so next thing, I unscrewed the drain plug at the bottom of the filter. I'm just letting that drain now, and then I'm going to re-thread that onto the base of the new filter. Now this sort of sensor itself, there was a T25 Torx required to undo the screw, which I've lifted out. I'm now going to twist and pull the sensor out of the old filter. So in the sensor itself, there was a couple of rubber O sealing rings, which I would recommend replacing. I don't have them myself, they didn't come with a kit, so if I do this again in the future, or when I do this again in the future, I'll have a hunt for those and try and get those sealing rings ordered as well. But for now, I've just put the sensor back in. So I'm going to take these caps off now, and then I'm going to pop the fuel filter back on, just making sure that it's orientated correctly. You've got green for go. There's also an arrow on top which shows it going into the fuel filter, and then the white little dot here, again correlating to the white fuel line, will be the outflow. Okay, so the fuel filter, the fuel lines are push fit, so I've just literally pushed them back on, put the sensor wiring back into the sensor itself. Just having a cursory look. Before now, I'm going to prime the filter itself just by squeezing this, and I'll keep doing this until the fuel comes through and starts to fill up the filter. You can see it coming through now. And then I'm going to start the engine, just obviously taking care with it on the axle stands itself, but I'd rather start it, check for any leaks now, rather than putting it all back together, including the wheel, and then finding it as an issue. So I'll go and do that now. Okay, so I fired the car up, it's all working. I'm just obviously checking for any leaks, and just making sure it all works, which it does. The only sort of top tip I'd give is, I was obviously using the hand pump to push the fuel and prime the filter. The top tip I would give, because it didn't start the first couple of times, is keep doing that until you see fuel. It sounds obvious, but keep doing it, I should say, until you see the fuel coming out of the outlet and then on into the injectors themselves. So that was the only top tip. It does take quite a few pumps, but once fuel's going into the injectors through the fuel filter and you're pushing the fuel through using this, then that seems to be what got it to fire up. So now all I'm going to do is just let the engine run for a little bit, just to make sure the battery's fully charged, and then I'll show you the process of fitting it all back together. Okay, so I sighted the fuel filter and then tightened up the nut just here, and then back up top, access from the under the bonnet. I then just sighted the tubing, or the hoses I should say, back in their sort of retaining clips, just so it's all nice and secure. Next thing I'm going to do then is pop the wheel arch back in with all the clips and the screws as before. Okay, so I've got the wheel arch cover back on. I've just taken a soft wire brush and just brushed down the hub surface itself. I'm just going to now apply a little bit of copper grease, and that just helps prevent the old brake disc squealing, if I can get my words out. And then I'm going to pop the wheel back on, and I'll show you that process as well. Okay, so I put the bolts back in. I've just done them up hand tight. I'm now going to do the last piece, which is the wheel locking nut. So I can just fit that onto the end of the bar that's provided with the car. Again, I'll do these up hand tight. I'm then going to lower the car, and then I'm going to put it to correct torque setting for all of the wheel nuts themselves, which in this case is 112 Newton meters. Again, if you're not sure, definitely consult your manual or ring up your local dealer just to double check that it's the correct torque setting for your particular wheel and nuts. Okay, and again, the reason I'm going to do this on the ground is just then there'll be some natural friction that I can push against to get the correct torque setting. 112 Newton meters. Pop my 17mm socket on the end, and now I'm just going to go around again. The wheel won't free spin now because it's on the floor, so I'm just going to now get it to the correct torque settings, and I'll keep going around doing the locking wheel nut last, and then that's it, good to go. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe to help grow the channel and help other beaters out there too. Thank you.